These are the WINWING Orion Rudder Pedals with the dampener, formerly known as Skywalker, but I think they ran into a few, let's say, obvious issues with that one. We're going to look at the features, we're going to get up close, inspect the build quality, talk about the good and the bad, chat about the pricing and the value, and then talk about who these rudders are for. So this is what you get in the box. You get 2 footrests, 2 pedals, mounting bars, an anti-slip pad, some tools, USB cable, and of course the damper. But can you spot anything missing here? Where's the instructions? These might not be hard to put together, but some basic instructions would have been nice and it would have saved me like 5-10 minutes just trying to work it out on my own. These actually come in 2 variants, the non-damper and the damper version. I will test this as a non-damper version briefly. However, most of the footage you'll see, if not all of it, includes the damper attached, as this is what's being reviewed. The physical design certainly looks extremely hardy and aggressive. They're around 54 centimeters wide, so it's a fairly wide pedal base. You just need to make sure your measurements are good for whatever they're going to fit inside. For a bit of context with that, here are the T-Flight rudders. And you can see there's a bit of a size comparison there. And you can see it's a substantial difference in the size of the width. And again, I have a set of Virpil Ace rudders here. So you can see these are a little bit more comparable in terms of size or width. Overall, the whole unit looks extremely well built. And I would say design-wise, it's really attractive. They've just got that heavy industrial look to them. They look expensive, and best of all, they feel expensive. The cost is something that I'll touch on towards the end of the video though. The build quality overall, is just heavy duty with lots of attention to detail. It feels like with every new product WINWING release, they just keep nudging the bar that little bit further forward. The footrests are full metal, and I'm not sure what kind of finish is on these. It's not raw metal, but it's definitely got some kind of coating on it. Whether that will hold up over a longer period, we'll just have to wait and see. There's 3 main modes that you can set up with these. Now, there's a return to center mode using the spring and the damper for flying fixed wing planes. You can remove the spring for non-return, and that's great for helicopters. Or you can use the locking pin to lock it to the center for using with ground vehicles. Maybe handy for the likes of War Thunder. They're compatible with all the games you might think. You got Microsoft Flight Simulator, X-Plane, DCS, War Thunder, IL-2, so you're pretty much covered across the board. Comes with a large anti-slip mat and some mounting holes on the bottom for fixing to a cockpit. Now, I'm just going to remove the mat for the rest of the video. It's just going to allow you to see the rudders a little bit better. For the dimensions, we have 542 millimeters in width, 313 millimeters deep, and around 218 millimeters high, and coming in at just under 7 kilograms. So there's definitely a bit of weight to them. There's 18 centimeters of full travel. It's advertised that this is industry leading, but it's not. The Brunner rudders do have more usable travel at around, I think it was 23 or 24 centimeters. This set I'm running here has the damper upgrade, which has got 24 positions from light to heavy. And all you need to do is turn this little clip, or this little rotary knob at the top. And it does have it's got a nice little satisfying click to it. Now, as far as the damper is concerned, I found it to be a little bit weak. I ended up, in my setup, running the dampener I think it was 1 or 2 stops from the very top. That's where I ended up running them. Now, will that shorten the life of the dampener? Maybe. I'm not too sure, but I feel like something a little bit stronger would have been nice. Now, there is a detent through the middle, It's very minor, but it's there, so just be aware of that. Probably slightly less than what you would get on, say, a set of TPR rudder pedals. They run on a Hall effect sensor on all 3 axes, which is pretty much standard for any of these rudder pedals in this sort of price bracket. This also means that they should last a lifetime. There is also no heel plate with these, so you need to figure out some sort of plate setup for your heels if that's the way you fly. For me, the way I fly, if I'm taking off, my heels are always on the ground and I use the toes to push the rudder. This is just so that I don't inadvertently push the brakes while I'm trying to take off. So after having used them and used the mat, which you saw earlier, I realized that the mat in my setup is kind of useless because it would make my heels stick. So trying to use the rudder smoothly just became a little bit more difficult. So I quickly removed the mat. But then on the other side, the mat does do a terrific job of keeping the rudders in place. But I reckon if you're on, if you're on carpet, you're not going to be using this mat. You do need a hard surface for them to, or for it to work correctly. The one thing I have to pick apart about this whole setup are these mounting legs here. Jesus Christ, they're just so fiddly and finicky to install. I'm surprised at the design of these. I hope this is something they change in the future. I understand the concept being that once you've mounted them, you can run them along the channel. But as far as rudder pedal mounting goes, this has probably been the worst experience getting these little legs attached to the main base. Now these have a pedal angle pitch of 102 to 148 degrees, which is brilliant. And when you reach the end of the travel, it seems to be dampened. This is super nice. I can't stress this enough. I really, really appreciate the way these feel towards the end of the axes. There is something to beware though, and it's super important. You need to make sure that you do not over tighten the rudder pedals when you're putting them together. It's just this bolt here. This can cause a slight bit of stickiness in the toe brakes, which you just don't want. The whole unit is made from aluminium and stainless steel. Well, not the whole unit. This little plate on the front with the logo on it is made from plastic. I would have loved to see that in metal and match the rest of the build, but then we might not get the backlight logo on the front. Not a big deal though, so I'm not too fussed about it. The main body, that's basically everything that's in black, is powder coated. Like I said before, the actual pedals have some sort of coating on them. I'm not sure how long that is going to last. I tested these right out of the gate with Microsoft Flight Simulator with the SimApp Pro software. They worked first time. I just had to bind all 3 axes and I was done. But there was a huge dead zone. Now to get rid of this dead zone, you do need to download SimApp Pro. Load into it and click dead zone setting, then uncheck RZ device and apply 0 or whatever setting you would like for the dead zone. In my setup, I went for 1%. So what are these like to fly with? These rudder pedals are up there with some of the best non-force feedback rudders I've tried. In fact, I think they are the best. Just as smooth, if not smoother feeling than the Virpil Ace pedals. The ability to have such a range of adjustment on the actual pedals and get them vertical is, it means I find it way more comfortable on my specific rig. And I love the physical design of the pedals. The dampener, I think, is working an absolute treat. It's super smooth, although it might be a bit light. As I said before, I'm running it 1 or 2 clicks from the very top, but that's a personal preference. One of the highlights for me is the toe brakes. They feel a little bit dampened on the ends, and I reckon this leads to a more realistic feel. One thing I do think is missing from a lot of these rudder pedals on the market is load cell brakes. And I was a bit, let's say, disappointed not to see them on here. But look, these have the best toe brakes out of any rudders I've ever tested. They're smooth and with some good weight and a dampened feel at the end of the travel. Price-wise, I'll say these are the best sub 500 set of rudders you can buy, coming in at just $330 US, plus shipping and maybe taxes, just depending on where you live. They directly compete with the Virpil Ace rudders on price, but beat them in terms of build quality and adjustments. Not by much, but just enough to make it a point. Both the Virpil and the WINWING are on par as far as accuracy goes though. Your other option might be the Thrustmaster TPRs, which are a sort of, you could call them the gold standard of rudder pedals, although coming in at around $150 more. Taking into consideration that price, you are likely to be able to buy these locally, so you don't need to worry about import tax. That's definitely something to think about. After saying all that, value-wise, WINWING's rudders are up there with the best, and they deserve to be, punching slightly above their weight. These would be my choice of rudder pedals out of anything else in the market, excluding force feedback options. Keep in mind that only two rudder pedals I haven't tried would be the MFGs and the Ruddle Plus. So I haven't had my feet on absolutely everything. So just keep that in mind. So let's go through the good and the not so good. And as always, I love to start with the good bits. Right off the bat, it's the price. These are a good price for what you get. The build quality and finish is excellent. They feel as accurate as anything I've ever tested. The position adjustments of the pedals are great. They've got quick switching from return mode for helicopters, which is great for people that fly them. The feeling in the toe brakes is a real highlight. I cannot stress that enough. And now the not so good. Well, the first one's going to be no instructions. And again, these are fairly simple to put together, but I would have saved myself 10 minutes if there had just been some instructions either in the box or online. The anti-slip mat feels like, let's say, a bit of a gimmick. It does its job in some sense, but for me it just created an extra problem with my heels sticking to the base. And those pesky extruded mounting arms, they're just a nightmare to fit. And finally, WINWING, as far as I'm aware, don't hold stock everywhere in all countries, meaning that you may need to pay an import tax. And then we have the dampener, which, although is actually quite good, I do think it's a little bit weak. And again, I'll stress that I managed to get it where I like it, but that was right at the end of the resistance. So who are these rudder pedals for? These rudder pedals are for anyone that wants to move on from the likes of T-Flight or Turtle Beach rudder pedals. Someone that wants something more substantial and well built. They might not be for a first-time flight simmer, but anyone playing Microsoft Flight Simulator, X-Plane, DCS, War Thunder, will absolutely love the dampened feel of the toe brakes and the super smooth rudder axis and the minimal detent. Also, if you're someone that is fanatical about build quality, and I'm one of them, I think you'll love these. They've got a heavy duty build with a super smooth experience with only the minor niggles that I mentioned. There's not much not to love about the WINWING Orion Rudders. Just make sure you measure your rig or space and prepare to pay the extra import taxes.